We're now going to answer this question here. Now, this is a bit of a tricky question, and in your test, there are going to be tricky questions, so you need to prepare yourself for that reality. It's going to start off kind of easy, and then as we get towards the end, it's going to get pretty hard. Okay, hiring a basketball court costs $10 for a booking fee plus $30 per hour. Write an expression for the total cost in dollars to hire the court for X hours. Okay, so we know that it costs $10 for a booking fee. So if you want the court at all, it's going to cost you $10, and then you have to plus onto that $30 per hour. So obviously it's going to cost you more money if you use the court for longer. So we can kind of picture this already in our heads. Let's imagine that you wanted to use it for 2 hours. Well, that would be 10 plus 30. We'll put a 2 in there. It's going to be 10 plus 30 times 2 is 60. So it's going to cost you 60 plus 10. It's going to cost you a total of $70 if you were to use it for 2 hours. Now, we've written an expression here that allows us to calculate it for X amount of hours here. Next, it says, for the cost of $40, you can hire the court for 1 hour. How long could you hire the court for the cost of $80? Assume that the time does not need to be rounded to the nearest hour. So now it's saying, imagine that you spent $80 for the court. Well, how much time would that give you if you spent $80? Well, the first thing I would do is I would take my $80 and I'm going to deduct the $10 booking fee. So that means it's $70 that we're really thinking of. So now I need to ask myself a question. 30 times how many hours is going to be equal to $70. Okay, how can we figure this out? Well, what we're trying to do really is say, how many times does 30 fit into 70? And if you're kind of like, if you're thinking to yourself, how do we know to do that? Give yourself a simpler example. Let's imagine for a second that it wasn't 70. Don't write this down, but imagine it was, 60. Well, 30 times what is 60? Well, it's going to be 2 because 30 goes into 60 twice. But we're not dealing with 60, we're dealing with 70. So the number's a bit uglier, but the same principle applies. To figure out how many hours, what we're going to do is say, well, I've got $70, I've got 70 here, I'm going to divide it by 30. How many times does 30 go into 70? Well, would you agree? It goes in twice because 2 times 30 is 60. And then I've got 10 leftovers, don't I? I have 10 leftovers, and that's going to be 10 over 30. So it goes in 2 times with 10 leftovers, and that's 10 over 30. So we can write that down as 2 and 1 over 3. Now, we haven't explicitly learnt this yet. So if you're thinking to yourself, my goodness, that's hard. How did you know how to do that? I don't want you to freak out too much. This would be like a challenge type question. This question is actually taken from the reasoning section of one of your textbook exercises. It's taken from, let me just look here for a second. It's taken from exercise 5G, algebraic modeling. It's reasoning question 14. That's where this question is from. So if you want to practice more of these type of questions, go to your textbook and practice them. Okay, we're not done yet. So that means it's going to, the hours is going to be 2 hours and a third of an hour. So what is that? Well, that's going to be 2 hours. And what's 1/3 of an hour? Well, it's 20 minutes. So that means if you paid $80 for the court, that means you get to use the court for 2 hours and 20 minutes. Again, a little tricky. Some stuff here that, we're going to learn later on in the year, but it's just kind of testing your general maths knowledge. Next bit. Explain why it is not the case that hiring the court for twice as long costs twice as much. Okay, again, what you should do here is give yourself an example. So for instance, we're explaining why it's not the case that hiring the court for twice as long costs twice as much. So let's imagine 2 scenarios. Let's imagine hiring the court for 1 hour, and let's imagine hiring the court for 2 hours. So that's twice as much time. We're going to see if the price doubles. Okay, so remember it's 10 plus 30 and then 1. So this is going to be 10 plus 30 is 40. And then over here, this is 10 plus 30. And then we've got a 2 in here. This is going to be 10 plus 60 is equal to, this is going to be 10 plus 60 is 70. Okay, so let's think for a second. Why didn't this price double? It hasn't doubled, has it? Because, double of 40 would be 80. So why hasn't it doubled? Well, what has doubled? Would you agree that 30 to 60 has doubled? But this 10 has remained the same. So the reason why it doesn't double is, and this is where you're going to have to write a sentence, because you don't double the booking fee. Right? The booking fee just stays as it was. This doubled, but this didn't double. And because this didn't double, our final answer didn't double. All right, next one here. Again, it's getting a bit harder again. It says, find the average cost per hour if the court is hired for 5-hour basketball tournament. All right, so let's just sub in what we know here. We know that the hours is going to be 5. Okay, so that means I've got 10 plus 30. I put a 5 in there. All right, that's going to be 10 plus 30 times 5 is 150. So it's going to be $160. So for 5 hours, it will cost me $160. But then you've got to ask yourself the question, what's the average cost per hour? So the average cost per hour. Now, again, this isn't something that, we've explicitly learned in class, but this is why it's a higher order thinking question. It's not something that we're going to teach you in class. That's why what makes it harder. What you're going to do here is you're going to take the $160, and what you're going to do is divide it by the 5 hours that you've used it. And that's going to give you the average cost per hour, right? If it's $160 for you to hire the court, if you now divide it by how long you've had it, that's going to give you the answer. So how can we set this up? We can set this out like this. How many times does 5 go into 1? It doesn't. How many times does 5 go into 16? It goes in 3 times with 2 remainders. Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, 1 remainder. My bad. Because it's 15 and then 16, 1 remainder. How many times does 5 go into 10? 5 goes into 10 twice. So therefore, it's $32 average. So on average, it costs you $32 to hire the court for 5 hours. The last one here. Describe what would happen to the average cost per hour if the court is hired for many hours, e.g. more than 50. So again, let's just try this out. Let's try what would happen if the hours was equal to 100. Okay, so that means I've got a 10 plus 30, and then I'm going to put 100 in here. That's going to leave me with 10 plus, now what's this going to end up? It's going to be 30 times 100. It's going to be 3,000. Right? I haven't put it on too many zeros there. No, that's good. So that's going to end up being 3010. And then to figure out the average cost, what you do is what we did above. If it costs us $3,010, we're going to divide that by 5. Now, what's that going to be? Well, we can come over here. We can do this. 3010. How many times does 5 go into 3? It doesn't. How many times does 5 go into... Oh, sorry, it's not 5 this time, is it? It's 100. My bad. It's 100, right? The reason why it's 100 because we're using it for 100 hours. I'm looking at the 5 up there. It's 100. How many times does 100 go into 3010? Well, we actually don't need to do this time. You know that it's going to be like approximately what? It's going to be approximately 30, isn't it? It's going to be approximately 30. And this kind of holds true for now. Let's say we made the hours even greater. Let's say we made it 1,000 hours. Well, that means it would be 10 plus 30. And now we've got 1,000 here is equal to 10 plus... Now, this is going to end up being 30,000. This is 30010. Is that enough zeros? It is. And now to figure out the average cost of this... we're going to take 30010, divide it by 1,000. And do you see how, 1,000 pretty much goes into 30,000 30 times. So again, it's going to be approximately 30. And if we actually come to, if we think about this closer, it's actually closer to 30 the bigger our number is. So it's closer to 30 the bigger the number is. So that means our final answer here is it will get closer to 30. it will get closer to 30. And that's kind of the thinking there. So again, that's a pretty hard one. The reason why it's going to get closer to 30 is because, as it's up here, it's $30 per hour. So we would expect what's going to happen as we're playing more and more hours. What's going to happen is that the booking fee becomes more and more irrelevant because it's the hours that primarily takes the lead there. But you've got some pretty high order maths happening here. And this is definitely not a question that I would expect everyone to get. And it's fine that if you don't get everything correct, you shouldn't go into a maths test expecting 100%. You should expect to be like, oh, there's places I still need to improve. All right, hopefully this one made sense. A good tricky question, that one.